What do you call Batman when he's standing behind curtains? The Draped Crusader. Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Comic Book Editions Volume 230. Today, I have some back issues recently added into my collection that will end up completing 3 different titles for me. That's always exciting when it happens. So I'm looking forward to sharing those with you as well. There's also some comic books, primarily mostly 2024 releases, that I had the hardest time finding. I don't know if you did or not either, so I'll share some of those with you today and we'll compare notes. How about that? It's going to be an exciting Comic Book Editions Volume 230 video, and I'm glad that you're here for it. Welcome. Before I get started showing you some of the titles that complete my collection, I want to show you a back issue I found this past weekend. Doesn't complete it, but it sure helps me get down there in numbers of what I need. It's Justice League of America Volume 1, issue number 85, originally released at the end of 1970. This is a giant reprint issue. It reprints Justice League of America Volume 1, issues 10 and 11, which is the first 10 is the first appearance of Felix Faust. Plus, there's a reprint in here of a Mystery in Space comic book, issue number 8, which involves Merlin casting a spell and changing the Knights of the Round Table with those from the 25th century Knights of the Galaxy. That's all contained. This issue couldn't come at a more appropriate time because this week, John's Comics with Kids and I are doing another Avengers versus JLA. And it's going to be issue number 10, one of the issues reprinted in this story. So it's going to be Wednesday night, tomorrow night if you're watching this video on its original release date, on John's YouTube channel, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. If you're watching this after March 12th, look for that on the Rewind. I also have a playlist folder that compiles all of the JLA versus Avengers streams that we've done so far. I was so excited last month Wonder Woman was the MVP for the very first time ever. So that was a thumbs up. We'll see what John and I think and who had the better number 10 issue, the Avengers back in the 1960s or the Justice League with their Volume 1 1960s release. That's what we'll decide. Having gotten this book now, that knocks another one off the list and brings me down to 8. Was 9, now 8. And you see the list of the comic books that I still need to complete this Justice League run. It seems so doable. I've given myself a goal of having it completed by the end of next year. And I think 8 left to do, especially since none of them are huge keys, seems very doable. So look forward to future progress on that here on my channel. I can't tell you, you can order this, but I was going to say you can order this online, and that's cool, and it helps get it down, but I can't tell you how much fun it is, and you probably know this, when you're out hunting and you find the book for yourself. And that's what it was like this past weekend. I didn't know the store was going to have it. I'm paging through. It's there. I like the condition. I like the price. And it became mine. That's like the best feeling ever because then you have a little bit of a story associated with it too. And I love my comic book memory stories. Let's move on. We have a Christmas themed cover for you this time. We're moving over to Adventures of the Outsiders. This is issue 43, published in 1986. This is a reprint of Outsiders number 5. So DC did this with a few different titles, probably most successfully with the New Teen Titans. So what they did was they took the Outsiders, and this was after Batman had left them. So they weren't Batman and the Outsiders anymore. They were just the Outsiders. And they launched a Baxter direct market series, meaning that you could get the comic books first in comic book stores only. And then about a year plus later, they would start reprinting them in a reprint title. And that's what Adventures of the Outsiders became shortly after Batman left. I had all of the issues of Batman and the Outsiders, completed that, I think in Comic Book Editions Volume 169, and then was starting to work of what was left of Adventures of the Outsiders. A few original issues, and then they went into the reprints from the Baxter series. So this one helped checkmark one of the ones that I needed. Issue 44, also from, actually this is from 1987 because the previous one was at the end of 86. This is the beginning of 87. We got a nice Geoforce cover here for Batman and the Outsiders, a reprint of the direct market series number 6. I didn't ever buy the direct market for this. I tried to pick up the Teen Titans ones as a childhood collector when I could. I lived about an hour away from the nearest LCS, so getting stuff that was direct on the market was very tough for me. You know, my opportunities to get to this town an hour away in another state wasn't consistent. And I tried to pick up what I could. But with The Outsiders, which I enjoyed their first run, Batman and the Outsiders, and even the solo adventures of the Outsiders, but I never did end up reading until they came into the reprint period here in Adventures of the Outsiders, the direct Volume 2 version of this. And I haven't read these in quite some time. There's some that I picked up, in the last few years to help complete the run, which I've shown in previous comic book editions videos. And I just need to sit down and start reading through this run and see if I enjoy that. And maybe if I do, I'll end up picking up the Volume 2. It certainly isn't expensive, that's for sure. And then we have a Brian Bolland cover for issue number 45. And this completes Adventures of the Outsiders. So now I have all of the Batman and the Outsiders, and I have all of the Adventures of the Outsiders series. Not planning on going for the Outsiders Volume 2 unless, once I start rereading these, or reading these, I should say in the first case, for some of these issues, I decide that I end up loving it so much because I know this series got canceled so soon that it didn't end up completing the entire run of Volume 2, the direct market Outsiders. So we'll see if I end up picking that up. Right now, no plans for that. Looker was a character that they introduced later on in the series, and honestly, I don't remember a whole lot about her. I think her name was Emily. And I looked at her, I could look at her, Looker, and say, oh, that's Looker. But I don't remember what the character's powers or anything were, but it was a character I remember liking at the time. So we'll see if in my rereads, if I continue digging the character like I fondly remember being into the character as a childhood collector. So there we go with Adventures of the Outsiders, the first of 3 titles that I've now completed. The second of the 3 titles belongs to Hawkman Volume 2. This is issue number 16, where in 1987 for this, Richard Howell did the cover and interior art. He was the creative team on this. This Volume 2 only lasted 17 issues. And in my comic book editions, Volume 196, I showed issue 17. So I had read the conclusion to this story before I had read this story. So it essentially ends with Hawkman thinking that Hawkwoman is dead. This is a great cover with Hawkwoman and Gentleman Ghost that I like. I've read the bulk of this Volume 2 Hawkman series within the last year or so. I really liked this. I'm glad that I ended up picking up these issues and this run. I paid a little bit more for this than I probably normally would have. I ordered it online, and it was just one of those, I'm like, I look for this in the wild all the time. I never find it. Never. So I paid a little bit more than I probably should have, but it completed the run. So to me, I'm good with being done looking for this. Good series, though. If you're a Hawkman fan, I would recommend the Volume 2 series from the 80s to check out. So that's 2 series that I've completely wrapped up. And the third one is Rima the Jungle Girl. This is 1974 Joe Kubert doing the cover for this, very Kubert-ish. Rima was a series I liked, and I like how all the issues really flowed together nicely. I think that this would be a great retro review sometime on Fanboys Live in the retro review, and I'd really like to get Gary B on to do that because I believe he's a Rima fan as well and has all of these issues. There's a backup feature in here too called Space Voyagers. Never cared for that at all, and it's too drastic. I can't imagine the people that are into the jungle part of the book would be into the futuristic space part of it. And I just couldn't get into the characters from part of the Space Voyagers either. This series sure didn't last very long. Another series that Marvel had that was jungle related was Shanna the She-Devil, or Shanna the Jungle Queen, Shanna the She-Devil. I have issue 1 of that, and I probably will start looking into getting the other few issues because it didn't last long either from the Shanna run. That was recommended to me by Silver-Haired Bronze Age Babe. I remember Rima, I first became aware of her from the few guest appearances she made on the Super Friends cartoon. And a few years back, just before COVID, probably a year or two before COVID, I was well aware of this comic book, but ran into some at a comic book convention in Chicago and got almost half of the issues in one sitting and really liked them. And that's why I wanted to complete this run too, which I now have. So there's some more comic book issues that I'm only like one issue away from. The first one that comes to mind is Blue Devil. That run, it's like the very last issue is the only one I need. So I'll start putting together another hunt list and try to knock out and complete some more of these series. As I said at the beginning of this video, it's such a great feeling when you do complete a series, though. Love it. And I love how my CLZ looks when I open up that page and it's all the way through. Before we continue, I want to invite you, if you're not subscribed to my channel, to do so. I'm almost like literally in spitting distance of 850 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed, it's a great way to show support. Sharing this video on this channel with someone that you think might enjoy it or subscribe is another great way. 1,000 subscribers is my goal. The algorithm loves it if you give this video a thumbs up, a heart, and a like, and I love reading your comments, which I'll ask for at the end of today's video. So thank you if you're returning. Thank you if you're brand new. Just welcome and thank you for being here. I try never to take your time for granted. We're going to switch from some back issues to some more recent issues. Most of these came out just last year in 2024. And the first one that I want to share is this. This is Wolverine Volume 8, Issue Number 1. We have the John Tyler Christopher negative space cover. Now, this cover had been reissued before on a previous book a couple years back. It was called the Banana Wolverine, by the fans that nicknamed it that. I am so glad that I didn't buy a Banana Wolverine, and I considered it. I mean, it still sells for, $200 to $300 at least. I seriously considered it. And I'm glad I didn't, because all I wanted was this Virgin variant of the cover. They did offer a version of this that had the trade dress too, but I just like the Virgin cover better. I know it doesn't have the limited or the numbered down here in the corner like the original Banana Wolverine did. That doesn't bother me. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of reusing covers from different issues onto another book. I kind of don't like that at all. And DC has done that a little bit with some of those Nicola Scott variants that they released a few months back too. But the fact that I have this in my collection makes me extremely happy. I liked it so much, I ended up getting a second copy of it. I will tell you the truth on this though. The truth is, I had pre-ordered this, and a little bit later, the place I pre-ordered it from had changed their artwork, and they had listed the trade dress version. I thought, oh no, I pre-ordered the trade dress one by mistake. And so I went when it was released and ordered the Virgin one. But when it got sent to me, both were the Virgin copies, which I'd rather have 2 copies of this than no copies of this. I ended up reading this issue and enjoyed it so much more than I ever anticipated. This was a really good read. We've got Wolverine. We have a lot of Nightcrawler in here. They're taking on a villain, Cyber. Wasn't completely familiar with Cyber at all. This issue was so good. So good, as a matter of fact, that I'm going to start reading it, or the follow-up issues at least, on the Marvel Digital app. As of right now, I think they only have up to issue 3 posted. So I might let another issue or 2 try to get posted and then sit down and get caught up as fast as I can in one swoop. But if the remainder of the issues are as good as this one is, this is a series I'm going to enjoy, and that honestly surprises me. I'm not the biggest Wolverine fan in the world. To be honest, as well, Hugh Jackman is what made me a huge Wolverine fan, way back in the first X-Men movie. This comic book is the facsimile to Avengers Annual number 10. This is the 1 in 25 incentive variant cover. I think it's Elizabeth Tourque. Let's face it, Avengers Annual number 10 does not have a great cover. The original one was done in 1981. There was a reprint of it, I don't know if it was a Hasbro or a Toy Pulse or something, where they packaged an action figure in with a reprint of this, and it had just Carol as Ms. Marvel on the cover, and that's okay. This one's getting better. It's not my ultimate favorite, but this is really what needs to be depicted on the cover, because this is the event that causes everything to happen. Rogue versus Carol as Ms. Marvel. This thing at my LCS sold out immediately. I think it was gone before it ever hit the shelves because people had snatched it up. Avengers Annual 10, definitely a fix-it issue, trying to undo the damage that they really did in Avengers issue number 200. This annual written by Chris Claremont, Michael Golden, I believe, the original artist. Sitting down and rereading this was just like visiting with an old friend, because my original Avengers Annual 10 rather, oh my gosh, I think it's coverless and it had a ton of wear and tear. I ended up upgrading my version of it several years ago, probably a decade plus ago. So I have a nicer copy, and now I have a facsimile too that I'll go to if I don't end up reading it digitally. I think this is cool, nice little incentive cover. I might even dig this as a poster or an 11 by 17 or something. I'm kind of getting into the thought of the 11 by 17 like little mini posters and maybe framing those up. And I know, put them on the wall. That's what you guys say. Put something on that wall. Pretty cool though, I think. Here's one. It looks like it's X-Men, at least based on the cover, but it's not. So this is one of those Disney What If variants. But the comic book is Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, issue number 55. This was a decent read. Essentially, in this story, Peter Parker is dating someone new. And I'm not familiar with this character that he's dating. Her name is Shay Markin. And I wasn't familiar with her at all. And he's late to like his third date with her, and he's blown off other meetings with her too, and she thinks that he's not interested, but he is interested. It's being Spider-Man. I mean, that same situation, they played that out so many different times throughout the years, and that's another case of this. In this instance, we have the Rhino, and he's about to cause some havoc while Peter's on his date, and literally not even changing to Spider-Man. He gets out and confronts Rhino, and he's like, I'm on a date and it's tough meeting new people. Can't you just not do this today? And Rhino and his associate decide, no, we don't have to do it today then. That seemed a little unbelievable. But it was a fun story nonetheless. Very much more Peter Parker focused than Spider-Man focused. Most of these Disney What If variants had ended up on Amazing Spider-Man covers. There's a few that aren't on, but the majority, the bulk of them, are on the Amazing Spider-Man. I love that this is an homage to X-Men 137. I said recently, once to Biggie Shack, they were talking about these Disney What Ifs, and they were trying to figure out what cover it was. I said, it's probably an Amazing Spider-Man, because most of the Disney What If Amazing Spider-Man were, the variants were on that title. And he said I was full of shit. So, okay. Never saw this in stores either. And this was back in the fall. Just never ended up running into this anywhere on stores. So online is where you go, because I wanted it in the collection. Batman 237. This was released back in October. And I'm telling you, this thing was gone. I mean, it was just snatched up like hotcakes, and couldn't find this anywhere. I will say this past weekend, when I was comic hunting at the store where at one of the stores where I ended up picking up that Justice League that I showed you at the beginning of the video, I actually did see one copy of this, which is the first time I'd ever seen one of them out in the wild. I even looked for this right after it was released, and my LCS, they had them. They just sold out of them so fast. I had thought about getting the foil version of it, but ended up with the regular one, which is okay, because I found the regular one at a pretty good price on sale from a place I was already ordering from, so it wasn't going to impact my shipping really by adding this into the order. It's a reprint of a 1971 classic Batman and Grim Reaper story. You have the Neil Adams goodness not only on the cover but in the interiors, and Neil Adams just is a storyteller. He's such a great storyteller too. And it was a fun read, which I had never read before. And took a little bit of work to seek this one out and get it into the collection, but in the long run, I think it paid off. Batman, Brave and the Bold, issue 19 from volume number 2. This thing was a ghost from the moment it was released. A few days after it came out, on release week, I was at a different comic book store than I normally go to, and I just happened to see, do you have this? And they're like, no. Not only did they not have this cover, they didn't have this book at all. They didn't even seem to know what I'm talking about. That happened at a few different stores. Even my LCS, which stocks new issues very well, they didn't have it. I asked John's Comics with Kids to look over the West Coast the week it was released. His comic store is like, I don't know what you're talking about. It even had him show him a picture of the cover. Like, I don't think that was released yet. It did come out that week for those few places, I guess, that ended up ordering it. There's several different stories inside. The one that intrigues me the most is the one depicted on the cover. It's Wonder Woman teaming up with Plastic Man because her lasso has been stolen. So I haven't read this yet, but it sounds like a cool concept and a cool story. I do remember some other Batman and Wonder Woman team-ups from previous Brave and the Bolds or the Brave and the Bold Cartoon Edition comic books. Those things I didn't buy at the time they were released, and trying to find them as a back issue, these things are like ghosts. And I think that this is another book, even though it's only a couple months old, it's going to be the exact same way. I should get smart and buy at least a couple extra copies of this if I can find it somewhere online, which is the true difficult task right there. Cool edition, even though it was hard to come by to get into the collection. I think another reason why a lot of places weren't stocking that book is this issue number 20 is the final issue. So this concludes the Plastic Man Wonder Woman team up. There's a story about Batman getting a tattoo that starts spreading in this issue as well. Like I said, this book is much of a ghost as the previous issue was. So I guess I can see why the series ended up not sticking around too long. Just, you couldn't find it anywhere. I don't know, did you ever see these books in your LCS when they just came out? And trust me, these are only a few months old. I bet you didn't. I love this cover too. This is not the main A cover, but it's, I think this is a C cover this time, but it's a good cover for sure. And I'm going to wrap up Comic Book Editions Volume 230 with a book that took forever to come out because this was solicited for so long and there were so many different delays with this title. This is Justice Society of America, and this is the Tony Harris variant for issue number 9. This was supposed to be a regular ongoing, but all of the delays and pushbacks on this title, they ended up just making it a 12-issue limited series and stopping and then launching a new volume with a new creative team. I will say, of the issues that I have from this, which is JSA Volume 4, they were really good, and the stories were really good. In this issue, it is the son of Harlequin from Earth 2, who the JSA are trying to recruit a little bit because they're in need of some special skills. A great story. I know that Tony Harris, jumping back to the variant artist, he did a series of these, you know, like the guys of the JLA and the ladies of the JSA. Excuse me, the guys of the JSA and the ladies of the JSA. And I think he did another one too, or maybe he broke the guys up into 2 different covers. And they are very cool, but had a hard time finding this one in stores. I had posted this earlier this month on my Instagram to celebrate International Women's History Month because I thought it was a great cover to help celebrate that event. So out of all of these comic books I showed in the second part of the video that were mostly released last year, a couple right at the very beginning of this year, do you have any of these in your collection, or did you even see any of these? I'd love to know. Actually, let's dialogue about everything that I talked about in today's video. Your comments are welcomed, encouraged, and appreciated. My back issue of the week keeps celebrating International Women's History Month. It's Catwoman themed. That's already up on my channel. Check that out if you haven't had a chance already. And I'll continue with a Marvel lady for International Women's History Month next week. The greatest DC comic show on YouTube, Fanboys Live, and the Retro Review comes up Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Actually, it's 9:15 p.m. Eastern, 8:15 p.m. Central. I've got that completely wrong. The greatest DC comic show on YouTube, Fanboys Live, and the Retro Review comes up Sunday night, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 7:15 p.m. Central. We ain't even going to edit that this time. You'd think I'd know when the show comes on. I've only done it how many times? Signature King Tony Fett, myself. Sometimes we get Silver Hair Bronze Age Babe, Comic Food 2814, or Tim the Comic Collector. Come join us, and we'll have a great time. This past weekend, we had Steve from Burke Family 54 Comics on the show with us, and that was so much fun. I love Steve. He's such a great guy, and I haven't hung out with Steve on a live stream in quite some time together, so it was nice to get reunited. That brings us to the end of this Comic Book Editions Volume 230 video. I will see you for Avengers vs. JLA on John's Comics with Kids. And I'll see you next week for our next Comic Book Editions video. Until then, take care. Have a happy, healthy, and safe week. Bye for now.